welcome everybody who is here so far, and I hope, well, I'm sure we'll have more people joining as the session goes along, and welcome to all of our wonderful panelists. I'm quite excited for this session, and I'm going to keep my intro brief because we have a limited amount of time, but just to start off, I thought it could be good to give some context into how this session will fit into the larger series. So this session is really to celebrate 5 of our women fellows who were elected in our recent WISE panel in 2020. They really exemplify things we talk about a lot with WISE, which are scaling up and scaling deep impact. Our Women's Initiative for Social at its core is really committed to elevating the number, knowledge, and power of women social entrepreneurs. And this means the work they're leading that is changing mindsets, patterns of behavior, social structures, policies, laws, and norms. And this sort of work is really the sort of work all these panelists are leading. Initiatives that really not only provide services, but change structures. And this is the sort of work women lead time and time again, and that we really want the wider innovation ecosystem to recognize. We've seen that women time and time again do not get the recognition and the support that they deserve, and especially initiatives that are scaling up and scaling deep, doing this mindset shift and these legal and policy shifts do not get the support, the funding, or the recognition that they deserve. So this event is one in a series of many projects that is committed to changing that. And it's also an opportunity during Women's Month for us to celebrate women, for us to all come together and get excited and really celebrate the incredible work that all of you are leading. So I'm quite lucky to be moderating this session, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you. So I think we can really dive in. I'm going to start with just asking a round of questions to each of you about the scaling deep work you lead, so the mindset shift and the structural change. And then I'll shift over to asking you a little bit about the scaling up work you lead, changing laws and policies, and also maybe scaling out to other countries and to other beneficiaries. So Keithlin, I will start with you. Keithlin Carew is the Executive Director of Helen's Daughters, which is an initiative to promote acceptance and integration of rural female farmers into the agricultural sector in St. Lucia through a mix of capacity building, technology integration, and improved market access. And we see Helen's Daughters as really scaling deep by changing the dominant mindset that farming is a man's job and something that only men should be participating in, and that advocating that women should be integrated into the farming sector. So Keithlin, in your opinion, what obstacles do you see that need to be overcome to really change this male-oriented perception, and how have you overcome those perceptions within your work and really changed people's mindsets around who gets to participate in the farming sector?
Thank you so much, Claire. It's really a pleasure to be here. Also, it's a pleasure to be a part of this amazing panel. Diana, Gita, Jessica are doing amazing work, and all our other fellows. So again, I really want to thank you and WISE for setting the stage for us. And to go into your question, I'll just start with an anecdote. I was raised in a rural household, and on both sides I had grandparents who were farmers. And the household, my maternal grandparents that I was raised in, my grandmother would wake up at 2 in the morning. She would be in the Castries, the capital cities markets, by like 5, finish selling all her produce and so on by 10 a.m., come back to make breakfast, lunch, and so on, then go back into the farm and harvest. And knowing her job and knowing what she went through every day, one day when she actually passed away, I was looking for some documents and I found my mom's birth certificate. And on it, she listed herself as a housewife, and my grandfather listed himself as a farmer. And from there, the idea sort of stuck with me, where it's like, why is it that even in the women that are integral part of food security and of local production, why are we always sort of pushing ourselves back and not sort of claiming that title as a farmer? And I just started to realize often the mindset that it was perpetuated throughout our society, that a farmer, I think not only in St. Lucia, but globally, that farmers are male. If you go into the market right now, you'll see 90% of the vendors are women. But for some reason, our consumers just think that they're reselling the produce from male farmers are not actually realizing that they're growing the produce and also selling it. I think for us, we need to recognize that women are technically the first formal contact of food. And for some reason, we're not creating enabling environments for them to actually thrive in the agricultural sector. We need to realize that women also have to balance a lot of responsibilities that men don't have to balance. A lot of unpaid work, from childcare, from caring for senior and elderly parents, which is very much a tradition of like a responsibility borne by women and not by men. And I think finally, it's also a mindset change for women ourselves, to sort of own their title as a farmer. I think oftentimes we think that as if a woman is a farmer, she's not as bright, she didn't do well in life and so on. And we're trying to change that mindset that you're not just a smallholder farmer, you really are an agricultural entrepreneur.
Caitlin, and I think you brought up some really incredible points here, especially that women, when we take part in things, it's not even perceived the same. A woman farmer is not seen as farming. And I think that especially with care economics and the way women are participating always in the care economy and how it's perceived so differently and how it's not appreciated, this is so important for us to recognize, especially during COVID and how that's come out during the pandemic. So thank you. And I will shift now to Dina, Dina Haryana. Dina is the founder of Sejawa Foundation, which is an organization that really aims to end violence and bullying against children in Indonesia by engaging both parents and policies, and attacking a general lack of awareness and understanding about good methods of educating and instilling positive values in children. So Dina, could you tell me a little bit more about how your good parenting model really works to change behaviors in parents and educators and really tackles those mindsets around violence and bullying?
Thank you for the question, Claire. And thank you so much for this opportunity today to be able to speak in this respectable forum. And I'm so grateful to be, a part of the family of Ashoka. So let me explain to you a little bit about why Sejawa was established in 2004. Well, actually, the reason why it was formed was because it was driven by the deaths of high school students during new student orientation that happened every year in every beginning of school year. At the time, senior students were given authority by the schools to run the new student orientation. And often the activities were unsupervised. And such moments were used by the senior students to show power to their junior by intimidation, physical violence, verbal harassment, other forms of violence. And these senior students were tasked to discipline their junior students during the orientation. And I would like to give you some illustration before I answer exactly your question. In 2011, a new student in a high school in Banten called Amanda died of exhaustion. She was punished by the senior student because she forgot to bring her name tag. And she was asked to carry heavy sack during the 2 days of the orientation everywhere she went. And then she got exhausted and she died. And in 2010, in Sulawesi, one of the islands in Indonesia, died as he was punished from making a mistake by having to swim in a swimming pool. And he was not able to swim. And he got drowned with no one being able to save him. The student orientation was done by the pool at the time. So children were punished by teachers or parents as well as a form of disciplining them. So not just the student orientation by the senior students, but also teachers, parents, use slapping, pulling hair, hitting fingers, with a ruler, pinching ears, yelling, shouting, humiliating, were all considered normal at home and at schools at the time. So at the time, corporal punishment was seen as normal and necessary, and was considered, is educational and towards students or children who were disobedient or crossing the line, or those who were against the parents' or teachers' wishes. And in Maluku, one of the islands in Indonesia, there was a saying, "Di ujung rattan ada emas," which means at the tip of a rattan cane, there is gold, which means beating up children using rattan cane was considered educational. So parents even asked teachers to use rattan canes to hit the children when they showed disobedience. So some parents and teachers were defensive during the anti-bullying movement being introduced by Sejua. And Indonesia is actually the fourth most populated country in the world with around 270 million population. And we have about 80 million of children. And the number of schools around the country are estimated to be 300,000. So it's a huge country. And it is a challenge to deal with the children's issue in the country, such as bullying, due to the huge size of the country and the variety of parents' education and awareness on child rights or the cultural context and other factors. So due to such challenges, dealing with the issue of school-based bullying was such a big thing. And it was important to use an approach that could reach out to most people in Indonesia. Therefore, working with mass media was the most effective way, as we saw at the time. And Sejua therefore held press conferences in dealing with cases that happened in various places. Sejua also conducted national anti-bullying gatherings, inviting government officials, principals, community leaders, teachers, parents, and mass media. So the new vocabulary bullying, which was not known before, was quickly known in Indonesia due to the very good mass media coverage and to the fact that many people could associate with the negative experience that they have had in their childhood as well. So a paradigm shift took place in Indonesia. The old way of disciplining children was no longer accepted. And through the mass media, we kept on saying also to the government, the urgency of putting a halt to hazing aspect of student orientation program in schools. And we really urged the change of format into something that could bring child safety around the schools. So we created also training programs to parents and teachers, as well as to children. So, and a part of the training was actually helping parents and teachers to be the role models to children, to make sure that children can respect them and can trust them. Also how to communicate effectively with children, making sure that they maintain the self-esteem of the children, as well as how to empower children to enable them to be the best of themselves. So a part of this program was also on positive disciplining. So we introduced training in schools around Indonesia and trained teachers and parents to enable them to train other people in their communities. And we also participated in 3 parliamentary hearings in Commission 10, which deals with education in the House of Representatives, addressing the cases that had happened, asking them to support the movement on anti-bullying, and most importantly, to prioritize child protection law that could stop bullying and corporal punishment, both in schools and at home. And we thank God that some parliament members showed empathy to our work, and they also became our advocates in the government. And finally, in 2016, after so many kinds of effort, we finally, got the law that we wanted, the law that addressed school violence that was properly written. And this implied as well consequences to be faced by schools and by teachers if they still permitted hazing as a part of student orientation or corporal punishment towards students, then they had to stand, in front of the law. And since then, heavy bullying was overcome, no more deaths at schools caused by student orientation, and it has changed, the whole format of activities. As time goes by, we face more issues online that could harm children: cyberbullying, child online grooming, addiction to gadgets, child sexual exploitation online, among others. And we have 196 million of internet users in Indonesia, with 91% of users are young people between the age of 15 to 19 years old. And meanwhile, many parents' digital literacy is still lacking. Many of them do not have smartphones even though they may provide smartphones to their children, without realizing the negative content in the internet. And also, they do not have digital parenting skills to enable them to function well to protect children online. So I would like to say that there is a report of 49% of children that have been bullied on cyber, as well as 90% of children who have been exposed to pornography at the age of 13 to 18. So we also designed digital parenting training that we found the first case in 2009. And the training now has gone around Indonesia. We train parents, teachers, activists on digital parenting. And we also work with other institutions like Child Online Protection, Indonesia Child Online Protection, as well as Cyberkreasi, the National Movement on Digital Literacy. We also work with the ICT Ministry, the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, the Ministry of Education and Culture. So we shift from bullying into child online protection. So maybe I should say it now that far, and maybe I can continue later.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you've brought up so many incredible points here about how important it is to have holistic impact. You're working both on the legal level and on the mindset shift level, and really utilizing the media, getting collaborators in different sectors to be advocates for your work. And I think that this is so important for mindset shift, to really have advocates in different sectors of a given area or what you're trying to shift. So thank you so much, Dina. And I will shift now to Veda Nani, who is someone who is also doing quite holistic work and working both on the mindset shift and the legal and policy change level with her work. Veda is the founder and director of ABAD, which is an organization in Lebanon that works to bring together members across civil society, including activists, lawyers, and researchers in the fight for gender equality. And ABAD translates to dimensions in Arabic, which embodies the fact that the reality is that violence against women is a multidimensional issue. So the solutions to it must be multifaceted as well. And so, Veda, I would love to ask you a little bit about, since gender-based violence is really a taboo topic, how do you bring it up, and how do you engage people in conversations around gender-based violence? And how have you used social experiments and artwork to really spark this engagement?
Yeah, thank you, Claire. And actually, I really also value being part of this amazing panel and connecting with the inspiring, really, I would say, feminists and women leaders around the globe in this conversation. So to really thank you for the opportunity. Actually, for us, the gender-based violence, of course, is still quite a taboo issue in many countries and around the globe, as well as being one of the gravest, maybe, human rights violation that is mostly affecting women and girls, but also can affect a variety of vulnerable groups, even men and LGBT community among each other. So for us, as the name of ABAD well stands, it's we adopt a multidimensional, multidisciplinary, and multi-systemic approach in the way we address the issue, the violent dynamic, and in the way we try to push forward the agenda of gender equality. So for us, it's not a war between man world and woman world. Gender stands for social role. So for us, it's a question of both men and women being victim, quote unquote, of the gender socialization, the gender boxing, and what is expected from us as characteristics in certain communities and at certain moment and certain society. Hence, for us, if you want to work on the equation of gender equality, you need to work on both sides. which is men and women at the same time. Having said that, also we do acknowledge that we need to address root causes as well as consequences, hence the holistic approach of Ab'ad. So it's not about only healing bruises of those affected, which is maybe the easier part to do, providing holistic care. We do that at Ab'ad, of course, which is provision of services, holistic care services like legal consultation, forensic medicine, psychiatric evaluation, psychotherapy support, skills building for survivors of GBV. But at the same time, it's a question of addressing the root causes, which is trying to dare at looking what is really causing the problem. And with the use of the systemic approach and the right-based approach and the people-led approach, it's basically, for us, it's understanding the situation from the people we serve at the service level. And this is from where we identify policy needs, social norms that are driving the behavior. And at the same time, what are the requirements on the level of legal reform that can enhance the protection for these people. So everything starts from this room and go back to this room in influencing the other components of our work, which is policy development, policy dialogue, advocacy for introducing new legislations or amending those that are discriminatory against women and girls. At the same time, working on capacity strengthening, generation of information through research, action research that is also informing the different interventions, as well as resource development. Through the 10 years of the life of Ab'ad, we have been established in 2011. We tried to influence the national system on the level of multiple, let's say, legislative wins. Among each other is repealing the Article 522, which is a law, a very shameful law in the Lebanese Penal Code, which is related to marrying a rapist. If a victim of rape marry her rapist, he can escape punishment. That was existent in our legal text. What we try to do is like really using innovation and using social experiment first to stimulate a public debate around victim blaming culture and really facing the society with the social norms that are really governing our mentality, our attitude and practices. Then we had a campaign led by the survivors themselves, actually, where we first were talking to opposants, speaking to the enemy, usually to feminist group, which are the religious leaders that are the one influencing political parties and influencing all the legislative work in the parliament. And this is how we had, like, you know, the women themselves going in front of the parliament asking for abolishing this article after a cumulative work around dialogue and advocacy. We were able to have the article abolished and completely deleted from the Lebanese law in less than a year, actually. So it was a campaign of 6 months, but with heavy preparatory work on using the systemic approach and the public health approach in trying to understand the climate and trying to shape the opinion, the public opinion around a cause, which is basically, I guess, even a right that we gain back for women. The added value of that, just very briefly, is that the model that we used was that simple, very kind of contextualized, but also very grassrooted in a way that was replicated in other MENA region country. Like the same model, the same intervention was adopted in Tunisia. The same steps that we followed using the power of number, the power of the voice of the people, but also the power of nudging, possibly, and like influencing behavioral change. And then after that, even Palestine followed. We were inspired by Morocco and Egypt, and the same model, the same campaign, the same slogan was actually replicated in other contexts to be able to address same, let's say, right-based issue. I'm gonna stop here. Maybe we can discuss further in the question and answer. Yeah, thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much. I think there's something so important I want to bring up with this, which I think people don't realize. When you change a law like this and a policy, it not only affects the people at the time of the shift, but people for generations to come. So when we talk about measuring impact, you can't just talk about that first group of beneficiaries. You have to think through all of the generations to come who will be affected by this. So I think this is such an incredible example of what we mean when we talk about scaling up and scaling deep impact. So thank you so much. And I'm going to shift now to Miriam Montag. Miriam, I'm so glad you're able to join us. And Miriam is the founder and director of Project SOAR, based in Morocco, which is an after-school program that has also now been scaled to Uganda, which empowers teenage girls to know their bodies, values, voice, and rights. And it has served over 2,800 girls since 2017. So Miriam, you have a really interesting model for impact, which really utilizes data for the impact shift that you have been implementing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about why is it important to track data when it comes to girls' empowerment, and how have you utilized that data to realize your impact?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I'll just first share a little bit about our mission, because perhaps inherent to our mission is the problem, which is our mission is to empower teen girls to be the leaders of today and tomorrow. Now, we do that through providing a curriculum, a signature curriculum, which is made up of 25 workshops. And it takes girls on this transformative journey where they learn about their value, their voice, their body, their rights, and their path. So that's sort of how we view empowerment, is taking girls on this journey. But I have to say that what happens is when we say to people that we're empowering teen girls, they say, you know, oh, do you mean through like after school tutoring? Are you tutoring them in math? What kinds of skills are you giving them? Because empowerment really is not a term that people are that familiar with. And so we very much lean into data to show the impact that Project SOAR is making on girls, using kind of terms that people might understand. So first, of course, we collect our basic data, which you can see here, that we've got 27 chapters across Morocco and Uganda. We are tracking every one of the girls who goes through our program. We provided it to over 3,000. We have almost 200 women who've been trained in the SOAR methodology to become facilitators. We provided over 170,000 hours of empowerment, and we have set up 38 girl leader clubs. But really, those are more about input data, right? So what does that actually add up to? What do you get if you invest in Project SOAR? So this is where really looking at how what Project SOAR does, how it impacts a girl in the longer term. So here's just a little, this slide shows you some of the data that we collect regularly. So we are tracking girl dropout rates. So, and we're comparing it to the national average. So here you can see that a Project SOAR girl, and just to let you know, a Project SOAR girl comes from the lowest socioeconomic class. She's living on less than $1 a day. She has parents generally who have extremely limited education, and many of them cannot read and write. But you can see that very few Project SOAR girls drop out of school, right? So less than 1%. Then in terms of child marriage, you can see that, again, less than 1% of Project SOAR girls get married underage, even though they come from communities where child marriage is prevalent. Very important to places like, you know, the Ministry of Education. You can see that a high number of girls are passing the baccalaureate, which is this very tricky exam, frankly. And we, again, are comparing it to the national rate, which includes girls who are very privileged, right? But the Project SOAR girls are performing much better than other girls. And you can see that close to 88% are going on to university. So this is just, we have a whole system in place to track data. We use a CRM system that tracks data on every single girl. We do baseline and endline surveys. We do workshop feedback loops and a a assessment at the end of every single module with each facilitator. As well as that, we check in directly with a random sample of 20% of Project SOAR girls. So just to show you, like, translating empowerment into real impact, into real numbers that people can understand has been critical to our scaling model. And so I'll stop with that.
Thanks so much, Miriam. I think it's so important. Oh, sorry, here's a little bit of feedback. I think it's so important that we rethink too how we're measuring impact. I think this is such an incredible example of what new impact measurements could look like and how to think beyond simple counting of numbers of people entering a program and to really think through what does it mean to have impact? What does it mean to change the way people live and systems and mindsets? And I think that this is such incredible data that really could be scaled and used as an example for others who are hoping to do similar work. So thank you. And now I'll shift to our final panelist, Jessica Sheffield, who very kindly joined us very, very early in the morning to be on this panel. So thank you, Jessica. Jessica is the founder and director of Guardians for Nature, which is engaging the private, social, academic, and governmental sectors in Costa Rica to turn children and their communities into environmental champions. And at the core of its work is really empowering these students, teachers, and principals as agents of change. So Jessica, so much of your work really involves collective action, which is a strategy we see really used a lot by women when they scale deep and when they change mindsets. So could you tell us a little bit more about why working collectively is so crucial in achieving the structural environmental change you aim to see in Costa Rica?
Yes, and thank you, Claire, and I'm so honored to be here and so inspiring to hear all this work that you guys are leading. Well, to respond your question about collective impact, I'm going to give you a quick backtrack, a quick background. Costa Rica is recognized as a world leader in sustainability, but it's not always been this way. Starting about the 1950s through the 1980s, we lost more than 50% of our forests with the impact, social, economic, and environmental impact that entails. It took real vision and strategy to change our course to now being one of the countries that has more than 5% of the world's biodiversity, being a country that has almost all of its energy coming from renewable resources. And we also have a plan to decarbonize our economy by 1950. So all this we've been able to achieve with a top-down approach, meaning it's the government that has driven the plans and policies to get us there. Now, what Guardians do, our work is, we're empowering the citizens, the base of society, so we can close that gap and empower a bottom-up approach. We believe if we empower this bottom-up approach, we really will be a truly model country. And we view school communities made up of students and their families, teachers, and principals as that leverage point that if we give them the necessary tools, the trainings, and incentives, these school communities will create this ripple effect that would truly change our society. And what we're doing right now is that we are engaging with the private and public sector. So, for example, we're working with the Ministry of Education in a local, region, and national level. We are working with local governments. We're starting with 3 local governments that we hope to expand. We're working with businesses. So businesses are helping not only with economic resources, but they're also helping with human capital in this transformation. We're working with a network of NGOs. They help expand our message, and then we also collaborate in many ways on this approach. And we really see this collective approach. We really see public and private sector as the fuel to empower our school communities. And I'll give you an example. We have an ecosystem of projects, and this ecosystem of projects come together in the community where I live. what I see it as a laboratory. So we have 7 schools right now participating, 7 public schools, and each one has been adopted by the private sector and by a different business, and they're giving their resources, the human capital, and we're working on like a step-by-step process or a phase process where we want to create the schools of the future. And when I say the schools of the future, it's basically schools that live in peace, children and the school communities live in peace with themselves, others, and the planet. Schools that coexist with nature, and we're only going to be able to get there if we work collectively towards empowering these school communities on reaching that stage. So definitely collective impact, working collectively is crucial to everything that we do. It's what fuels our whole mission and vision.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I think the bottom-up approach you're talking about is so revolutionary. And I think especially now as we're talking about climate change so much, in the coming years, this is exactly the sort of initiative that needs to get scaled and the way to think about how to address sustainability issues. So thank you. I think these were such incredible insights. I realize we have, I think, about 7 minutes left. Oh, a little bit. My computer clock is a little bit ahead. So I want to shift to a question really that I'll pose to all of you about what sort of shifts we want to see on the ecosystem level. I want to ask you all, how would you call on stakeholders and policymakers in the ecosystem for support to achieve the goals your organizations have? And what changes would you like to see within the ecosystem that you think the sort of scaling up and scaling deep work you've all been talking about? So I'll go first to Keithlin with this question.
Thank you so much. And ladies, amazing and inspiring work. Congrats to all of you. To your question, Claire, I think that there's a quote by Shirley Chisholm that goes, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring a folding chair. And I'm really a strong proponent of sort of forcing yourself into an ecosystem, whether they want you or not, and not necessarily relying on support. So for us, for example, the mindsets and scaling deep has always been an issue, and trying to sort of like change those mindsets has been difficult. But what we've also relied upon is creating solutions for ourselves. I think that the issue overall of gender equality, someone, I think was Gita, who mentioned that it is quite tricky sometimes because we tend to think that, for example, if we're pushing gender equality, it's more of pushing women above men. And what I've noticed is that to sweeten the deal, you sort of have to engage men as allies. And that has worked quite a bit for us, and sort of making it relatable to them that this woman could be your mother, your sister, your friend, and so on. And so wouldn't you want a better life, a more sustainable income, and so on for this individual that's in your life? Another thing that I've noticed, for example, in terms of changing the ecosystem, is at the governmental level, I think that we throw around a lot of words of gender equality and equity and so on, but do these actors really, they talk the talk, but do they really walk the walk? And so one of the things that we've tried to do is that, for example, get those politicians, those policymakers to see on the ground the work that's being done, and sort of like to force it into their face, the changes and the things that we're trying to actually change and transform. Thank you
so much for that. I love that. And I think what you're talking about is really giving these individuals in positions of power ownership over these problems, so they realize that they as an individual have to commit. It can't be empty words like it has been in the past. So I love that. Thank you. And I'll shift now to Dina with the same question. How would you call on stakeholders and policymakers to help you support you in the goals you aim to achieve, and what should? Oh, Dina, you're on mute.
Working with the government in a country with a size like Indonesia is a must, because our organization is just such a small one. How can you reach out, to influence, the whole of Indonesia unless the government steps into the actions? So talking to the decision makers, talking to the people surrounding the decision makers, and making sure you also work with allies so that whenever you have ideas, you know, you can influence the allies as well, you know, to be able to speak out on certain cases or some thoughts or ideas, new ideas, whatever. So that's what we've been doing with WISER. Also, mass media is a very important one, as I mentioned earlier. However, this is a new awakening thing during this pandemic. The fact that we are so into technology now, then the potential of reaching out to the whole of Indonesia, for instance, is massive. And why we are here talking to each other and, you know, being able to talk to the whole parts of the world is because we are, you know, using technology. So we've been active since, you know, at the beginning of pandemic, and we never did this before, you know. We always relied on face-to-face and meetings and what have you. But now we feel like, yes, we can do this. So going further, I think we need to really, you know, really work into this technology and really think hard how to make it really effective, especially also collaborating with the government.
I agree. I'm excited to see if we can continue to utilize technology in the years to come. So thank you. And I'll pass it now to Veda. Veda? Sorry, your mic is on.
Yeah, no worries. So actually for us, it's more of a more complex and more, let's say we need to take into account intersectionality, because in Lebanon, it's quite multi-layered in the environment that can influence any kind of change that we would like to push forward. Meaning there is not only patriarchy by itself that we're trying to challenge, but also Lebanon is governed by a very heavy confessional system that is also politicized and unfortunately corrupted. So the gatekeeper for any kind of change that and stakeholders that we need to influence, any kind of policy change or legislative change, you have to speak to the so-called enemy and to the who is opposing you, let's say. So for us, the most important is to continue adopting this positive approach that you're trying to make in talking to the other that is different, trying to understand, to find common denominators for negotiation. At the same time, trying to build alliances in a sense, if not supporting the work, but more at least neutralizing possible opposition. That is one of the major tactics that we have been following since the beginning to be able to gain some of the achievement for women and girls, even last year, end of last year, around the 16 days of activism to end violence against women. We were able with a campaign around using a song which talk about like really popular quotes. We were able to push the parliament to endorse also a new legislation related to sexual harassment in the workplace and the public space, which was very the first in the country that is also provide care for survivors, for the victims of sexual harassment. And that is by simply trying to reinforce the positive approach of we trust that you're gonna do the right thing. At a moment where everything is held by these structures, you cannot stop and only say, I want to point to the problem. This is easy. Everyone, all activists can simply say, okay, here is the problem. But for us, the most important is to work around solutions and innovation, at the same time trying to demonstrate new models of using public health communication, using behavioral change tactic to be able to use it in policy work. And that is key in bridging that divide between academia and activism. If you want to work on GBV and gender equality in this side of the world, I think even Miriam can identify a little bit to this context where it's not straightforward. In Lebanon, even we don't have a social protection system. So it's introducing everything from within and reforming the system from within, using all tactics possible in communication, digital, traditional, social experiment, speaking to the people from the heart. And one of the major learning, to be honest, from my activism in this field, it was have everything designed and led by the right holders that are concerned themselves. This is where you can achieve more impact. If they're the one voicing the need, they're part of designing of the strategy, of the messaging, of the tools, it's more authentic, it's more reflective of the reality, and it can more speak to people, especially those that are in a position of power. Don't do things on behalf of the people, even if you're doing activism. So yeah.
I completely agree. That sort of bridging is so important. And I know we're a little bit short on time, so Miriam and Jessica, if I can ask you both to keep your responses to a minute or two. And Miriam, I'm going to pass it to you now.
Yes, thank you. Well, being an organization that works with teen girls, I can't really, I mean, it can't be overestimated the importance of the family, right? So our whole approach to systemic change is really scaling deep under the sort of Ashoka definition, which is how do we help girls speak on their own behalfs in their families, right? So whether it's staying in school or child marriage, giving them the tools so they can intervene on their own behalf. And it works, right? These are very private domains in a very private culture, coming in from the outside and intervening on their behalf is not a sustainable solution, right? Giving girls the tools to speak up on their own behalf is a sustainable solution. So at one level, that's the micro level. At the community level, we are holding community dialogues. So allies come in, we contact them for assistance in holding these community dialogues. We raise these issues of importance because the girls are embedded in their communities, their families are embedded in the communities. And so if you want that kind of systemic change, that's critical. And then at the national level, similarly to Deanna, the importance of working with government. So we have MOUs with the Ministry of Youth and Sports. We will have a new MOU now with the Ministry of Education. And it's really helping government to understand what a good investment your program is, right? So in our case, the Ministry of Youth and Sports is not only opening the doors of all of their youth centers where we work, but they also are helping pay for our program, right? So once they get vested in the program and they are paying for it, right? They really want to see it succeed, right? That's where systemic change can flourish.
I agree. Thank you. And I'll pass it now to you, Jessica.
Thank you. So what we're doing is giving platforms for school communities to raise their voice and show their solutions. And two examples is one of them is My Guardian Challenge. We launched it nationwide last year with the Ministry of Education. And the Guardian Challenge is basically an entrepreneur competition with nature-based solutions with children ages 4 to 12. This year, we're incrementing it to children 4 to 16. And it is so heartwarming, inspiring to see children from their home during COVID time coming with the most creative and innovative solutions to help nature. And what we do is that we communicate and reward this to make that change. And the other one is the Guardian of Nature Teacher and Principal of the Year Award. Again, it's given that platform for teachers and principals to voice their own solutions, how they're transforming their communities, their school communities inside, but also how they're transforming the communities where their schools are at. And we hope that the work that we're doing in Costa Rica actually inspires a global movement of Guardian of Nature school communities.
It will. Well, I guess we are unfortunately at time, and I wish I had so much more time with all of you. You all inspire me so much, and I feel very honored to have been able to moderate this session. And I'll leave you all with just pointing out that I think what we've heard from all of you today is just how important working on different levels within a system, collaborating, getting advocates for your issues, and really empowering individuals are also important for changing mindsets, and also really thinking through these gender binaries and these different binaries we encounter in our work and how those can be overcome. So thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone who has attended. This is our call to action for anyone who's listening in the social innovation ecosystem to change the way you understand success and impact, and really commit to advancing this incredible work that we've heard about today. Thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to staying in touch with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. It was a great honor. Thank you.
Same here.
Thank you. Bye-bye from Costa Rica.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye.